Hi everyone, it's Kel. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to pop on today and talk a little bit about intuition and the voice within. And I wanted to do it through a story of something that happened to me when I was 25. I was given the date rape drug. And this is before anybody knew about the date rape drug. Um, and I lived in a drug-heavy community growing up. It was a very wealthy community, and I don't know how I dodged doing drugs. I was sort of like the jock at school, so I was more into that. But I did drink quite a bit. I was kind of a little bit of a heavy drinker. When I drank a lot. So I was working in a restaurant, and I had many friends, some were close, some weren't. And one day, this sort of new friend invited me out on a Sunday afternoon to go to this restaurant, actually this bar restaurant, I can't remember what the reason was for, to celebrate something or to meet someone. I think it was to celebrate something. Anyhow, so I went there and I met her there. We were the only people in the bar, except for the bartender. And so we ordered 2 margaritas, and he made them. And then he took them down after he made them, he took them down and then he put them back up on the bar. At the time, I thought that was strange, but I didn't think anything of it. Again, this was before drugs were being added to drinks and stuff like that, So he brought them to our table and we had a cheers, and I think I had a couple sips of this margarita, and I don't sip little. I have like a pretty good tot. And I was sitting there and I started feeling something very, very strange. And I said to my friend, I don't feel well. And she says, that's weird. And then my words started slurring, and she was looking at me a little bit odd. And I didn't know what to make of the situation because I had never been in a situation of that. I didn't really know her. I didn't know to trust what she was saying. I didn't know this bartender guy, and I certainly didn't know what was happening to me. So I posed the question to my inner self. I said, what is going on? And the voice came forward and said, you've been drugged. And then I said to it in my head as I'm sitting across from my friend, what do I do? And the voice said, you got to get out of here, and you've got to do it very, very fast before the drug starts taking effect. And I said, okay, where should I go? He says, leave your purse here and take your shoes off and make like you're just going out onto the deck, because it was a very hot day. And so I said, I'm going to go out on the deck. And my friend was looking at me kind of weird because I was slurring my words. And I went out onto the deck, and I went to the far end where no one could see me, and then I jumped off, and then I took off running. And I ran for a very long time, and the drugs started taking effect. And this was super intense. In this date rape drug, like, I had almost no use, no ability to talk. My visuals were pretty warped. I couldn't use my hands. My whole movements were really distorted, and I had no idea. I wanted to get to the police. But every time I tried to talk to someone to get them to call the police, they said to me, you're strange and you're on drugs, and if you don't leave me alone, I'm going to call the police. But no one did. So as the day carried on, I just kept moving, because the voice said to me, if you keep moving, it'll work through your system. So I just kept moving. I didn't know where I lived or what to do or where to go. And this whole time I was dependent on this inner voice and my feeling. Like, the feeling was the thing that came first. The feeling was something strange is happening to me. And then I posed the question, what is going on? And then I got the answer, you've been drugged. And it wasn't throughout this whole episode of being drugged, it was a feeling thing and a talking thing. And the feeling thing is the mother, she's faster than words can convey. She is feeling. And the talking is the father principle. So between these two, I managed to sort of get away. I learned in the time after, when I confronted her about it, I learned that right after this happened, the bartender had come over and says, "Is there something wrong with your friend?" And she says, "I don't know." And he says, "I think we should take her home. As a matter of fact, I'll take her home and you continue out, so don't worry about it. I'll handle her." And she said, "Great, thanks very much. I really appreciate you taking her home." So it was, by listening to the inner world rather than depending on the out world, and trying to allow people to take over that are external from me, I was really at the mercy of pretty much anything. I was quite vulnerable, and going within, especially when your mind is quite cognizant of what's going on, going within and asking, what do I do? Where do I go? And trusting that is critical. And that day, I saved myself through listening to my inner voice. And you know what? Took about 8 hours for that drug to get through me. And I didn't have any recollection of who I was, where I lived. I was running in bare feet. I can't remember why I took my shoes off. I think it was to not draw attention to myself, that I was going to make an escape. I left the purse and the shoes at the table. We were the only ones. But again, I was in my early to mid 20s. No, I was in my early 20s and listening to my inner guide. And I know all of you have these stories about trusting your intuition or hearing the voice within. And there is no better guide than that voice, and really going forward into the world with all this media that's hitting us. And we used to just have TV in the home, but now we have it in our hand all day long on our devices. And so backing away from the devices, because when you are always involved with the device, it fragments you. And when you're fragmented, there is less trust of the self, because the self is not whole. The self is not unified. So, and when the self is not unified, the trust goes away and fear comes in. So listening to the inner guide, trying to not get your mind fragmented from all this media that is constantly hitting us, what's right, what to do when, what you need to have in order to be a good person, what you need to do to be a good person, all these things that are hitting us all day long, telling us what to be, what to look like, what success is. It's all really, a lot of it is really preventing us from being our authentic self. And a way to get to the authentic self really is to start shutting down that external world and really trusting that inner voice and that feeling, that guidance that comes through feeling. Just trusting it. And I mean, if you go in life and you make some mistakes on the trust part, don't worry. You're getting closer and closer and closer to being aligned. And this is what balance is. When you're balanced, you're not fragmented, you're whole and you're centered. You're bang on. And when you're in that balanced state, you trust the self. You listen to the self. You acknowledge the self all day long as your first source, your first go-to, your first connection to that source that is looking out for you first. And I know that we're all believing in the, the word we if we're into spirituality. However, being aligned to yourself first is critical. So, and I know all of you know that. But I did just want to come on and tell a personal story. And quite frankly, I've got hundreds of them. And especially how the inner voice has saved me. It's actually saved my life many times, saved the life of my child. And I'm telling you, the feeling comes first usually, and then the voice. And just, even when you're sitting in a crowd of people and something comes up, because I was sitting there with my friend, and actually it's happened to me quite a bit where I've had a kind of situation happen and I'm sitting with someone else or a group of people, and I just sort of pull my energy into myself and I pose the question, what do I do now, to myself? And I just wait, and it will come forth. It comes forth, and usually it comes forth in like so fast. The feeling of what to do, and then the voice. And that's the Mother, Father guiding you. Those two sources are the number one. The number one. And then everything else external from you comes next. I know you know all this, but it's so good to just say it again and to really reiterate that trusting the self is vital. And that when we get into the cosmology of the goddess, and more like into webinar 2, which I haven't made yet. And if you haven't signed up for webinar 1, I encourage you to do so. It's super cheap, and we use the money to buy cat and dog food on the farm for all these rescue animals. And if you haven't done that, sign up for that. That is sort of the diving board into webinar 2, which will be coming up. I just don't know when. Right now, I'm going to be on a plane in 2 days, and after we all get together on webinar 1, I'll start webinar 2. And I really look forward to connecting with all of you. And again, if you haven't signed up for the webinar, I will put the link below. Please do, and you'll be happy you did. Other than that, I send you all my very best. It's nice to see you here. I hope you subscribe, and please comment. I love to hear what you have to say because you are an interesting bunch, and let me know what you feel about this topic. All right then, everyone, you take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.